Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today I am joined by a very special guest of whom I will introduce here shortly as the Steelers get prepared to travel to San Francisco to play the 2-0 San Francisco 49ers. And the Steelers themselves, this would be one of those games you look at on paper heading into the season and thinking to yourself, well, the San Francisco 49ers, even though they're 2-0, hey, this is the 49ers. And look who they beat. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are they? But then again, we don't know the identity of the Pittsburgh Steelers headed into this contest on Sunday afternoon. And in fact, the Steelers themselves kind of down on their luck. 0-2 and without starting quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. Second-year quarterback Mason Rudolph will be making his start in place of Big Ben. I mean, you can't say anything more than that. And then, of course, the Steelers making a big trade earlier this week for defensive back from the Miami Dolphins, formerly now a Pittsburgh Steeler, Minkah Fitzpatrick. So we're going to be looking at all of these different storylines. We're going to be looking at San Francisco begins the season 2-0 for the first time since 2012. And as I mentioned, they won both of their games on the road, won 31-17 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then laid 41 in a 41-17 victory over the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati last week. So this is going to be ahead of an early Week 4 bye week for the 49ers. This is their home opener here in Week 3, hosting the Steelers, who come over to the West Coast, and that's not always the greatest news when Pittsburgh goes to travel, but hey, don't let me tell you everything about it. I have an expert here joining us on the program today, a very special guest. He is a 13-year veteran in the NFL, Super Bowl XXIX champion with the San Francisco 49ers, who also played with the Carolina Panthers, Denver Broncos, and Detroit Lions over that 13-year career. So who better to tell us about the 49ers than the current host of the Bleav and 49ers podcast on the Bleav Podcast Network, Mr. Eric Davis. Eric, tremendously humbled and honored to have you here today. How are you doing?
I'm well, man. Holding on for an old man.
That's funny when you say old man, but I was thinking back to, some of the heyday when, you got to play against the Steelers. Was it in the AFC champion? Or no, I'm sorry, the Steelers were playing against the Chargers. You guys played against.
Yeah.
You ended up playing the Chargers. Steelers got their comeuppance a year later, but yeah, I think about that because it was in the same bracket. It was almost like the same thing Rod Woodson told me, and I said, man, you look good, and I'm sure you're holding up very well.
I'm still in one piece. The game, it normally takes body parts from you, but I was one of the few guys that got out when they wanted to. Normally the game is done with you before you're done with it, but I actually played as long as I wanted to and knew it was time for me to step away, and I did. So I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and it's always good, man. I mean, it sounds like you got away with your health and on your own terms, and that's always awesome too. And to have a long, productive career as you did, and we'll talk about that in a few moments also, because I have something I want an interesting take on you. But of course, I mentioned the Steelers 0-2 going to the 49ers, who are actually 2-0 for the first time since 2012 as well. And I wanted to ask you about those first two games, the two victories, very big victories against Tampa Bay and Cincinnati. What really stood out to you in those games as far as what the 49ers are doing? I guess I would say perhaps differently this year, but we know they had some quarterback injuries last year, so that's probably the obvious one.
Well, you know what? I can still look at some things that they're doing differently. Number one, they're playing faster. They're playing better defense. They're playing under control. They have gone out and gotten players like Greenlaw and Quan Alexander at the linebacker position. They are so much faster in the middle of the field, and the things that they're able to do when those linebackers are on the field, the attitude that they play with, it's different on that side of the ball. They've gotten better. Witherspoon, Wilson, these guys have gotten better at their positions in the secondary. And even you can even look at Sherm. He's healthier. He's another year removed from that Achilles. He's healthier. So defensively, they're playing really sound, and the things that they are doing, it's repeatable. It's not fluke plays. They're playing sound ball across the board, so I think that will continue. Offensively, they're growing. They're making some plays. Kyle Shanahan is showing that he's a really good play caller. And there are a lot of things just by design that he is creating some wide open receivers down the field and making some things easy for Garoppolo. And even these guys have had 5 touchdowns called back for silly penalties. So, I mean, he is designing plays that are getting them into the end zone and creating big plays. So that part of it's different. And the quarterback is back. That's one of those things. But that's the part of it that I see right now. The offense is growing. They're doing things, but this defense is really picked up. And I think that's the major difference in what's happening in these first 2 games.
Yeah, and you know what I was trying to, it's really hard to maybe put the Bengals up as any type of standard right now because for all intents and purposes, they look like a train wreck. And the Steelers themselves haven't been exceptionally sharp on offense or defense, of course. And we're talking about, most teams in the NFL, they make their money by, whoever is under center as a quarterback, and Jimmy Garoppolo's back. He's healthy, 131.0 QB rating just last week with 3 touchdowns, 68% of passes completed. But on the other side of the ball now, the Steelers will have in his first start ever, second-year quarterback Mason Rudolph. And I wanted to ask you, from a perspective of, you're saying a lot about the 49ers defense, and I see some of the added pieces like D Ford, and, you mentioned, Richard Sherman's still there. And there's veteran players there too. There's young players like Bosa. I'm just trying to kind of, what might the 49ers do as far as game planning? I mean, I know I heard Kyle Shanahan's press conference, and he didn't think that there was a whole lot of maybe changeover, and I can't seem to believe that if you're the Steelers that, you're going to let Mason Rudolph pass the ball 50 times. So would it be difficult to game plan for a guy that has very little film? And what do you think personally of what you've seen in even just a short span of time of Mason Rudolph?
Well, number one, you're going to game plan for the offense. You play the player, but you game plan the offense. And that's the difficult part when you don't have film on the guy. You don't know how the ball's going to jump out of his hands until you see it. You can look at it on film, but you can't really tell that, how strong the guy's arm is, whether or not he's really staring things down, how calm he is in a pocket. Those are things you find out as you play against the player. But the Steelers' offense is going to be the offense. There may be some plays that they will take out because there are a lot of you've watched Ben over the years, and there are a lot of deep routes, long developing routes and plays that you can put into your offense because you have this mountain of a man standing there that's hard to tackle, that's fearless and will stand in the pocket till the very last second and take that lick and still deliver the ball down the field. I don't know how much of that Rudolph is going to do. No one knows until he hits the field. Mm-hmm. I don't know. The only people that even have knowledge of whether he is that type guy are in the Steelers' colors. So you won't know if those plays are still in the playbook until you get into the game, until the Niners get out there on the field. And as the season progresses, Rudolph is athletic. He did a good job that second half of the game. He was under the gun. The score was out of hand. You had a lot of it was time for the big boys to just come and hunt. They were just pinning that defensive front were pinning their ears back and just going to hunt the quarterback, and he still made some plays against them. So that's impressive, if you ask me. I don't see them changing the offense much. because that's part of the reason that you have this quarterback. It's part of the reason why you drafted him in the third round. Part of the reason why you have him as the backup quarterback is because you are capable of putting him in and continuing to run the offense if something happens to your starter. That's why a guy's a backup, so that you don't have to completely change things. So I'm with Kyle Shanahan. I don't expect to see the offense be much different beyond some of those deeper routes not being a part, and long developing routes not being a part of the offense early on.
Yeah, and I totally agree, and it's one of those things where I'm trying to think to myself, because there was a lot of praise by Kyle Shanahan, not only for Rudolph, but he said this game could come down to the final drive too. And I know that's not exactly reassuring. Steelers fans are out here; they were in panic mode on Sunday for sure. No one likes to see any team; they don't want to see their team go 0-2, kind of a sore loss, and of course we're all kind of everybody's angry at this replay stuff right now, but I'll table that for another time. But the Steelers, their offense hadn't been able to generate anything, and we really don't know if that's like just a byproduct of Ben Roethlisberger's injury with his elbow. We don't know if that was even something that was lingering going back to the New England game the week before. Basically, they're 29th in points scored and they're 28th in points allowed. They really haven't been able to stop a whole lot, pass and run. Well, the 49ers have been pretty much efficient on both sides of the ball. I know you mentioned some big names already on the 49ers defense. They got 4 sacks on Andy Dalton last week. I kind of want to hear some big names here, because the Steelers have only allowed 2 sacks all season so far against what I feel have been very good defenses with the Patriots and the Seahawks, and now they're going to face another good one with the 49ers. Who really stands out to you, and what might we see from the 49ers defense?
Well, just across the board, the offensive line is good. I mean, I'm interested to see how you're going to try and get the running game going. I know Connor's hurt, and that really affects what it is you're trying to do, of course. But that offensive line is solid, just across the board there. You talked about the protection that they are able to give the quarterback position. That gives a comfort level to Rudolph stepping in, and also from an offensive coordinator standpoint, you should feel good about that. I think a part of it is getting accustomed to the other guys. Ben was so A/B heavy in what he's done, and rightfully so. It's going to take some time for these other guys to get accustomed to their positions. Like Juju's a good player. It's different when you're that guy. It's different when when you're the number one guy and all the defenses are leaning towards you and the game plan is structured around you. It's different. It's different being the other guy. It's different being the number one corner. I used to have guys. There are some guys since we've been out, and they talk about what they've done and how they would play and what they would do. And I would always tell these guys, it doesn't matter. You were the other corner. I wouldn't have been. I mean, you were the other receiver. I wouldn't have even covered you. So I was like, you never would have it's one of those things that you have to look at. And in some cases, sometimes and look for this, and I'm going to be looking for it. Sometimes you get a backup quarterback coming in, and he has more rapport with the other guys.
Yes. Because
those are the guys he's accustomed to throwing to. He's accustomed to the timing of their routes. They're accustomed to his ball. The chemistry is there because those are the guys that are working scout team together. These are the guys, that second group. The other guys are the ones that fill the ball from him all the time. And he has a certain level of confidence because even when you're doing scout team, you want to look good. You want to complete passes. You want to make plays. And that quarterback starts to look for certain guys, even in those situations. So the offensive line is strong. I think the offense is going to be the same. I think right now you have to look at it, and that may be one of the strengths of the team right now. And I think that is going to allow them, as the running back by committee, as they get healthy and you're able to get that going again, I think that's going to help Rudolph, move forward right now. So if the stars of that offense, I know you have the peripheral guys out there, and they're, these are the guys that are going to get the highlights. and they're going to get all the fanfare. But right now, those big uglies, the big sexies, because every offensive lineman thinks he's sexy. Those big sexies up front, those are the guys right now. If you're asking me, looking at it and watching the tape, those guys are playing well, and that's what's going to give them a chance offensively. And that's why Kyle Shanahan is saying this could be a close game, could be a one-score game, because if you look at those guys, they have the players up front that could allow them to sustain some drives if you're not making mistakes on the edges.
Well, we had been commenting all throughout the week and even in the last week where the Steelers' offense was not sustaining any drives, some 3-and-outs and some short drives, tiring out their defense especially. I think there was like 11 and a half minutes disparity in time of possession that the Seahawks had over the Steelers last week. And, on top of any type of turnovers or penalties, you can't make, self-defeating mistakes in addition to that. But I like what you said about chemistry, because I think the obvious one, and I think of this too, just because of, Rudolph was playing in the preseason. So I think some guys have some rust maybe now, the way things are set up, and there isn't some of the star players, so to speak, or starters, they're not out there, and now they're they're getting some rust and they're knocking that off, in the first few games in September. And I don't know that Rudolph necessarily has that, but the chemistry, the obvious one, just to point out, I mean, he and James Washington played together, and we hadn't seen Ben Roethlisberger kind of get on the same page with James Washington yet, but we're assuming already that Mason Rudolph and James Washington are on the same page, having played so many games together in college and connected on so many passes. I think that's an obvious one. And if you add that to everything else, I do like what you say. We don't know for sure with Connor. I know he's limited, but he says, he feels good enough that they think that he's going to play, but you never know how this is going to shake out. But on the other side, I think the big one on the 49ers, you talk about the sexy offensive linemen. We have some guys here, over here at Steel City Underground that they think they're sexy offensive linemen too, or were at some point. Yeah, we got some guys that
all do.
They love their offensive line porn, so to speak. So, but the big one with the Niners is Joe Staley. I mean, one is going to be, there's a rookie, and I know nothing. I don't know anything about him. Just a rookie tackle. Justin, is it School? Is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Yes.
That one could be the matchup to kind of watch. I mean, considering if the Steelers kind of get on the same page with their defense here, and they got a lot of moving parts and a lot to figure out, as their season is kind of in jeopardy, because they're almost going to be desperate here. I don't think they want to fall to 0-3, especially with some of the other moves and stuff that they've been making. And I think they also kind of want to prove that maybe the previous 2 weeks, hey, we're not this team that should be getting beat on both sides of the ball. Can you tell me a little more maybe about the 49ers offense and what they're going to do maybe to kind of help out this rookie tackle? What will the 49ers do to maybe compensate for that? Because, I mean, he's an excellent player, a veteran player on that team.
Well, number one, I don't think they're going to change their offense much. So if you're expecting that, that's not going to happen, because Kyle Shanahan's offense is about the run game. And his passing it's about run action. It's not play action. It's about run action. So he's going to run plays. He's going to have leads. He's going to have angles, try and create angles that are going to make the backers, make the defensive linemen, make safeties try to commit to certain areas. And he's going to do that over and over. And then he's going to have his passing game off of that same action. That's why I say it's run action pass, not play action pass. He's not going to do a lot of faking and dropping straight back. He's going to try to move him around. So with that being said, you can have that action away from School. You can allow a back to help out and chip with him, and I think you're going to see a lot of that. You'll probably, if he's not having a good day, then you can always add a back to it. You can always, keep Kittle in, who's an excellent blocker. You can, allow him to be a part of it. And yes, Kittle is an excellent receiver, and why would you keep him in? They do a lot of that anyway. Because he is such a good blocker, they keep him in quite a bit, and they try to create the hidden plays, the misdirection plays, where guys are going to block, and then all of a sudden they're going to try to void. They're going to come into this area that's been voided. Goodwin scored a touchdown on that last week, with this old crap screen. And
there was more than one of them. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, and there's a guy out there screaming at old crap because he knows that's his coverage, but it was run to perfection. So school played that second half. He did well in the run game. I don't think they are going to change anything. I really don't think they're going to change anything. I think they have faith in him. They believe in him. That's why they, again, just like you see at the quarterback position for Pittsburgh, there's a reason why someone's a backup. There's a reason why you put him on your roster. Now, you know that a rookie is going to need some help, but I think they are going to go in understanding that he has some ability. He's not Joe Staley, of course, or they would have gotten rid of Joe and they would have put the rookie in and saved that money. But what I saw on film, he played well. He doesn't look as strong. So, ask how would you attack? I think you're going to see, of course, you're going to see blitzes coming at him. You're going to make him have to communicate. If I'm calling the defenses for Pittsburgh, I'm going to send, guys at him. I'm going to send, I'm going to run stunts. I'm going to run twists. I'm going to run my nickel blitzes. I'm going to run safety blitzes. I'm going to make him have to communicate, have to switch guys, have to know which one to pick up. And just see. And that's what you do to young players at every position. You make them have to think on the run while they're playing. And if you don't do that to him, then you're just doing a bad job at the coordinator spot. You have to test the young guy. So I just like you and I know that that's going to happen. Kyle has to know that that's going to happen. So expect to see a lot of plays going the opposite direction of school.
Yeah, and that is also, just to point out, school is going to be playing a left tackle, a premium position usually in the NFL, if there is one on the offensive line, and that'll more than likely, unless they switch something up, Bud Dupree has been almost exclusively on the right side now for entering the second season, so that'll be an interesting matchup to see as you got TJ Watt over opposite, and how the Steelers are going to handle that. And I know all the misdirection stuff, I was watching that Bengals game, and it was like, man, I could easily see this falling apart and everything with the Steelers, unfortunately. And of course, we don't want to see that happen. You need to see some back and forth. And I know there's been some communication issues as far as that goes. I think some of that just kind of deals with, Devin Bush is still a rookie as well, and he hasn't been the primary guy with the green dot. Vince Williams had it last week. The communication device being the quarterback of the defense. I'm just saying it for the listeners out there in case they weren't familiar. But Vince Williams had it, and then he hurt his hamstring, and he's still kind of questionable for what's going to occur coming up this week too. But the Steelers did make another move to maybe shore up the defense here. Sean Davis got banged up. He was banged up. He was out week 1 against the Patriots. Came back, played about a half, maybe a little over a half against the Seahawks, and had to leave the game. So I think that kind of prompted the Steelers to make the move, make the trade with the Miami Dolphins, and pick up Minkah Fitzpatrick. And everyone's thinking this is a major upgrade for the Steelers defense. He's penciled in to fill in for Davis, who went on injured reserve to be the free safety. And I wanted to kind of get your opinion on this because, they flew him in almost immediately to get to work. He's on a week in Pittsburgh trying to get acclimated to everything. Now, I guess the one positive is that in Miami he was playing in a 3-4 defense. However, they were using him all over the place, and I know you have some experience in the secondary all over as well. And I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on Minkah Fitzpatrick and how it might be better for him to maybe stick to one position, especially on the short learning curve with only, a handful of practices before he's probably going to be expected to play the full game on Sunday.
I personally think that was a great move. This right here is when he was coming out of college, I thought in that draft, he was the best overall player in the draft. That's how I felt about it. Regardless of position, I thought that he was the best player in that draft. So the high pick that Miami spent on him, I thought it was definitely worth it. Pittsburgh spending a number 1 on him, definitely worth it. There is not a safety coming out next year that's going to be better than Minkah. There's just not. So his size, his range, his ability to play in the box, in space, You can use him at nickel. I mean, he can cover receivers. He can cover tight ends. He can tackle running backs. He understands football to where he can get other guys lined up. He's going to be one of those. He's going to be that glue. He's going to be one of those guys that can clean up things when you have other players make mistakes. He reminds me with more ability. He reminds me of like Ryan Clark that was around there that people never really understood how good Ryan was because you had Troy making the flash plays. But Troy was able to make those flash plays because you had a guy like Ryan that whenever those flash plays didn't work out, whenever those hunches didn't work out, you have to have a guy that knows where everyone is supposed to be, and he can make that one-on-one tackle. He can get you back playing football as opposed to that being this huge play that goes for a touchdown. Because he understands the game at that level. And that's what I think you get. You get a guy that's going to understand things, that's going to be able to play, that's going to be a wild card that you're going to be able to game plan for, and he'll come through in those situations. So I think that was a big pickup. Communication that's an issue right now, and it's been an issue with Pittsburgh's defense. But a lot of that is because, as you said, you have young players out there. You have guys you have free agents. You have guys that are coming in that just aren't accustomed to playing with one another just yet, and that's a part of it. It's been a while since you had a collective group play extended time together there in Pittsburgh, and that causes some of that. So whenever you can get a player in that can still perform and trust me, I've been in those positions. I've done it. I've played with great players that couldn't do it. It's difficult to communicate, line everyone up, talk, and still play fast and do your job. Yeah. Everyone can't do that. He's the type player that can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, you also made mention of he could play anywhere and, cover just about anyone. And I think, you mentioned George Kittle being also a great receiver. And I think that's a thorn in the side, too, based on he was still available. And a lot of us here really wanted to see him in a black and gold uniform. And it didn't, turn out for one reason or another. So every time we go and we look over and we see, oh, no, this guy, and some of the woes that the Steelers had in covering tight ends, you think you could see maybe Minka pitching in on that immediately? Or do you think they're going to, maybe put like Devin Bush or Mark Barron, or will be some combination just because, I know Mink is capable of doing so, but again, it's just, it's a short week of practice.
Short week of practice coming in, but understand right now, it's just a question of how much of the playbook is transferable. So it's just the verbiage. There's only so much you can do on the football field, but the question is, which language are you speaking? Mm-hmm. Because if you come from a place that's speaking English and then you pick up a book that's in Spanish, okay, it's a different language. It's the same thing, but it's different language. Then if it's German, or if it's Italian. So that's the part of it that you have to see. What is transferable, and the more that's transferable, the more that you know that he can do as the game plan goes, because you're not going to have your entire playbook going into a game. It's going to be structured specifically for the 49ers. How much of that does he already know? And then there are some situations, as you said, if you want him on Kittle, that's easy. If it's a man coverage, if it's something like that, in those calls, cover him. Yeah. It's really that simple. You can come in and just say, hey, in this call, you cover that guy. And you have the other guys that understand you allow them to have to make the adjustment. Those type things are easy. Man coverage is easy. That's the easiest thing to do because it's just that, put a body on a body. The difficult part is when you have to start with the rush zones and the combination coverages, because now you have to make certain that everyone knows what they are doing and when the switches are occurring. So that's the part of the language that we have to make certain that he knows before you can really put him on the field in those situations. Because it's not just Minka that you're going to screw up. It's the other guys that he's going to screw up. And that's the most important part that people need to know. It's not what you do wrong. It's who you screw up when you do it wrong. that's what the obligation of knowing your job is and your assignment is, because guys can't play if they don't have the confidence that you're supposed to be doing what is called at that time. And that's what we don't know, just how much of it he's going to get. I imagine that they're going to try to keep him just in the middle of the field as much as possible. But those man situations, if Kittle is giving someone a problem and you think he can help, just say, hey, go cover him. That's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, and you said man's coverage is easy, but, that was something that the Steelers struggled with in years past, and they've pretty much, they didn't have the right personnel, especially when matching up with the New England Patriots many times, and I know it was very frustrating for fans. So when they hear you say that, then they're like, well, wait a minute, what's the problem here? So,
no,
I understand what you mean, though, yeah.
Man coverage is easy if you have the players to match up.
Yes.
So man coverage, knowing your assignment is easy. Now, covering the guy is not easy if you don't have the players. Because if you don't have the players, then you're gonna get your ass handed to you. But if you have the players, then man coverage is easy. So that's how that goes.
Yeah. And the only other note I did want to make is, we're mentioning a lot about, the pass coverage and secondary and stuff like that. But, I mean, you did mention, Kyle Shanahan likes to focus on the run. Matt Breida, 12 carries, 121 yards, and Raheem Mostert, 13 for 83 last week. They ran a total of 42 times if you count the 4 times that Jimmy Garoppolo held onto the ball, design run or not. 42 times, 259 yards. It's just amazing. And it's, I'm hoping that's something I think the Steelers are going to have to put a lid on and, try and contain. They're going to have to look for some of the misdirection stuff that you were talking about. And I think it's going to be a very entertaining game. I'm looking forward to it. A number of reasons. I think some of us have kind of lowered the expectation, at least, because a future Hall of Famer in Ben Roethlisberger going on the shelf for the year. What else can you do? You can't be like, hey, you know what, this is a playoff team automatically or a Super Bowl team, where those expectations were. But a lot of us are looking toward the future with Mason Rudolph and also seeing how this defense may evolve now with Minkah Fitzpatrick being added to the team. I wanted to thank you, Eric. I got 2 more things for you. First of all, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and about the Bleav Podcast Network and Bleav in 49ers podcast.
Well, I'm doing that podcast, and wherever you listen to your podcast, please check it out. Bleav, spelled BLEAV. That's it. Bleav in 49ers podcast, and I started doing this. A guy named Rayshawn Haylock, he and I, we do it, and it's. Of course, we talk ball. We get into the X's and O's, but I've even all of my analysis. I've never been one about doing stats and giving stats, because you can get the stats on your phone. You can sit at your computer and get the stats. You can Google stats. The job of an analyst, I have always believed, is to explain what the stats mean. To talk about how the stats have affected you as a player, your teammates. Talk about how certain things, the momentum of certain situations or injuries or the outside influences, how those things affect you, and that's what we get into on the podcast. I bring up stories about things, how they were. I'm working at the network and being close to a lot of the players now. I still have conversations with these guys. I talk to guys all the time. I watch film and break down film and let guys know what's going on. They call me and I want me to watch something. I still do it. And I have a feel for what I think a lot of guys are doing right now and how they see it. And that's the kind of stuff I like to talk about on there. Just not just the X's and O's, but the scenarios on how things are playing out, how I see them, how they happened when I was going on and when I was playing, because I think, especially with the 49ers organization, I think I have a very unique perspective from a player stand. I was drafted by the 89 champs. So that team of the 80s was in the locker room. I transitioned over from Joe to Steve Young and that perennial playoff team, won championship. I was there, and then I came back as the 49ers announcer when Jim Harbaugh came in and the team rose to prominence again. So I was there for that run. So I've kind of seen all the high times with the Niners and been a part of it. And so I got a lot of stories, man.
No, I love it.
I got a lot. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, I pretty much I wanted to jump out of my seat when I heard, you're interested in joining us. And again, I wanted to thank you for your time. And I had one more question just to ask you. It's a real short one, and it's one that may catch you off guard. But tell all the listeners out there something they may not know about you.
Something that they may not know about me. I am classically trained at the piano.
Wow. I would never have guessed. Would never have known that.
Yes.
That's awesome, man. I mean, that's got to I had to take a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, it's just practice, commitment. It's one of those things that, you just have a feeling for it and you just get in and you just have to start doing it. And I was always interested in, the piano, and my grandfather bought this old piano for me he heard me talking about it. And when I was a kid, he bought this old piano for me, and I played. It was like a 1930 something model. And I literally played on it until it fell apart and could not be repaired anymore. I mean, like, no lie, it literally just fell over when there was no more repair that could be done. But yes, I mean, I had 7-8 years of classical music theory, and so I think very few people know that about me. That's incredible.
I love hearing that. I could already picture you maybe with a piano in your home and, just somebody walking in or whatever, and you're sitting there playing, or, for everyone over dinner or something like that. Well, Eric's just going to go play a little on the piano. I think that'd be very, very cool. So thanks for sharing. Thanks for joining us once again. I truly appreciate it personally and professionally. And I want to just remind our listeners out there to like, comment, and subscribe on the show, or leave a review no matter where you're listening. And Eric, we always encourage our listeners here out there because, the world's a crazy place. So we like to encourage our listeners to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later. And Eric Davis, thanks once again for joining us today.
Oh, I had a great time. No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thank you. And listeners, we're going to sign off right now. So again, be safe, be good. We'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.